Usually when we think about how we learn to socialize, there's this underlying assumption that it's just pure instinct.
Right. Like it's just hardwired into us.
Exactly. It's treated like breathing, You walk into a room, you read the room, and you just naturally absorb the unspoken rules.
Eye contact, small talk, empathy.
Yeah, all of that. The expectation is that this social software is just innate, right? Like it's running seamlessly in the background from the moment you're born.
Yeah, it's a really comforting thought, certainly. I mean, society pretty much operates on the premise that everyone received the exact same intuitive manual for human connection.
Right.
We just assume we are all naturally wired to decode the subtle, invisible signals that people are constantly broadcasting.
And welcome to today's deep dive. By the way, today we are exploring a scenario where that intuitive software just throws up endless error codes.
I'm fascinated.
It really is. We're looking at a social landscape that is completely foreign territory, and we're doing it through a very specific, critically acclaimed lens.
We have a massive stack of analytical notes in front of us today.
Yeah, we're talking media psychology, creator interviews, script breakdowns from the TV show community. Our mission today is to unpack the character architecture of Abed Nadir.
And it is quite an architecture.
Right. And whether you listening have watched the show a dozen times or, you're just insanely curious about cognitive psychology and media analysis, we are going to look at how this character serves as a masterclass in navigating reality.
Absolutely. Because the documents we're pulling from today, they treat this character not just as a comedic figure, but as a remarkable psychological case study.
Yeah.
The notes break down his underlying mechanics, really showing how a mind, fundamentally misaligned with conventional social structures, builds its own tools to survive.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core concept that dominates the first section of our source material is metahumor.
Right.
But the notes make a very sharp distinction between how community uses metahumor and how, say, a typical sitcom uses it. It's not just a wink at the camera here.
What's fascinating here is that distinction is completely crucial. I mean, when we hear the word metahumor, we usually think of
Deadpool.
exactly Deadpool, a character breaking the fourth wall, looking directly at the audience, and making a joke about the fact that he's in a movie.
Yeah, it's like a superficial comedic device.
Right, it's just a gag. But for Abed, referencing movies and television tropes, isn't a gag. It is his primary cognitive framework. The notes highlight that he understands his environment almost exclusively through the rules of film and television.
I found this part of the analysis particularly fascinating because it reframes his entire personality.
Oh, totally.
Like, on the surface, speaking in movie quotes just sounds like a quirky, maybe slightly isolating trait.
Sure.
But the media psychologists in our sources point out that this is actually a highly sophisticated method of nervous system regulation.
Yeah, consider the cognitive load of a standard social interaction.
It's a lot.
It's massive. If your brain doesn't naturally process nonverbal cues, if you struggle with theory of mind, which is basically the ability to intuitively guess what someone else is thinking or feeling,
Right.
then real human beings are terrifyingly unpredictable.
I mean, people lie.
They lie, they mask their true motivations, their emotional responses are messy and irrational.
Yeah, humans are chaotic.
Exactly. So for someone lacking that innate social manual we talked about, reality is a constant source of sensory and emotional overload.
But television has structure.
Yes.
A sitcom has rules, There's an A story, a B story, a conflict, and a resolution, all neatly wrapped up in 22 minutes.
And that structure is predictable. Tropes are, by definition, recurring narrative patterns.
Right.
So Abed's brilliant adaptation is that he maps the chaotic, unpredictable nature of real human interaction onto the rigid, deeply predictable structures of television.
Wow.
Yeah. By identifying which trope is currently playing out in his real life, he can actually anticipate what people will do next. He is actively using the artificial framework of fiction to process the overwhelming reality of his daily life.
It's like being dropped in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, but using a movie script as your Rosetta Stone to figure out what everyone is saying.
That is a perfect analogy.
You might not intuitively grasp the local grammar, right? But if your pattern recognition tells you that you are currently in a meet-cute scene or a hero's journey montage, you suddenly possess a working translation of the social expectations.
Exactly.
You know your blocking, you know your lines, and you know how the scene ends. So let me ask you, does filtering the world through a screen distance Abed from reality, or does it actually allow him to participate in it safely?
Well, the beauty of that Rosetta Stone is that it allows for safe participation.
Okay.
Without that translation matrix, the sheer volume of social variables would likely be paralyzing for him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The metaphorical screen he places between himself and the world isn't a brick wall designed to keep people out. It's a tinted window.
Oh, I like that.
It filters the blinding glare of reality so that he can actually look at the people around him and engage with them on a manageable frequency.
Which speaks to an incredibly sophisticated level of character writing. He isn't a punchline, he's an architect, building his own bridge to the world.
He really is.
But this highly specific, systematized way of seeing the world didn't just emerge from a vacuum.
No, not at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Our sources dedicate a massive section to the behind-the-scenes origins of the character, specifically the meta connection to the series creator, Dan Harmon.
Yeah, the creator interviews in our stack reveal that writing Abed was not a detached creative exercise. It was a deeply personal exploration.
Right.
Harmon set out to write a character who processed the world through this intense, hyperfixated lens of pop culture. But as he developed the character's internal logic, he found himself relating entirely too much to the mindset he was constructing.
Yeah, according to one of the interviews we have here, diagnosing this fictional character's operating system actually led Harmon to a real-life realization about his own neurodivergence.
It's a wild story.
It really is. He consulted a doctor during the writing process and eventually discovered that he himself was on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
Yeah, he thought he was inventing a quirky sitcom character, but he was actually taking a psychological selfie.
It is a remarkable instance of art facilitating self-discovery, and it fundamentally changes the texture of the show.
How so?
Well, when a creator embeds their own undiagnosed cognitive patterns into a protagonist, it infuses the comedy with a profound vulnerability.
Right.
Sitcoms historically rely on universally relatable, broad-stroke situations. But Harmon injected his own highly specific neurodivergent traits directly into the text.
Yeah, the intense hyperfixation.
The utter bewilderment at unscripted social cues, the desperate reliance on media as a comfort object, none of that is written from the outside looking in.
So, if Abed is essentially a tool for Harmon to explore his own neurodivergence, does that make the show itself a form of therapy disguised as a sitcom?
It absolutely does, and that is its greatest trick. It engineers empathy through comedy.
Right, because usually media portrays neurodivergent characters from the perspective of the frustrated neurotypical people around them.
Exactly. The audience is usually invited to laugh at the character's inability to conform.
Yeah.
But here, the narrative structure itself is often bent to Abed's perspective. The audience is placed inside his Rosetta Stone. We see the patterns he sees.
We understand exactly why he needs a specific movie homage to process a complex emotion like grief or betrayal.
Yes. We aren't laughing at his coping mechanism. We are relying on it right alongside him.
But here's the thing. Relying entirely on a script means you can't handle improvisation.
Yeah?
And the ultimate improvised social situation is making a best friend.
Oh, definitely.
You can have all the blueprints and perfectly decode why people are doing what they are doing, but actually forging a mutual attachment is a different beast entirely.
It requires real vulnerability.
Exactly. Which brings us to the dynamic that our sources identify as the absolute emotional core of the text. Abed's friendship with Troy Barnes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological weight of this friendship cannot be overstated in these notes.
It's huge.
Troy is the variable that proves Abed's system works. There's an incredibly persistent, damaging misconception in both media and society that a highly systematized analytical brain equates to a cold, emotionless heart.
Right, the classic robot stereotype.
Exactly. The idea that if you struggle with a cognitive empathy, meaning you can't easily read someone's facial expressions or guess their thoughts,
Right.
then you must also lack affective empathy, which is the actual capacity to care about them.
Precisely the distinction. And the relationship with Troy completely shatters that stereotype.
But-
Abed's feelings are profoundly real and deeply loyal. He just expresses that affection through the unconventional vocabulary of pop culture.
Yeah, when he builds an elaborate cardboard spaceship in the apartment, or initiates a campus-wide game of paintball, he is not ignoring Troy to play alone.
No.
He is opening the door to his safest internal space and inviting Troy inside.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though, because looking at the breakdown of their interactions, a skeptic might see a flaw.
Okay, let's hear it.
By constantly indulging Abed's elaborate TV fantasies, isn't Troy actually stunting his friend's growth?
Yeah.
Like, at what point does the bit end and the real friendship begin if you always humor someone's coping mechanism? If you constantly pretend to be morning show hosts or space explorers, don't you prevent them from learning how to actually face
So I
reality?
see where you're going with this.
Is Troy's friendship just a form of enabling?
That is a very common neurotypical critique of this kind of dynamic.
Hmm.
But the media psychologists in our sources vehemently reject it.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they reject it because it fundamentally misunderstands the nature of Abed's mechanism. The TV tropes aren't a delusion. Abed knows he isn't actually on a spaceship.
Right.
The tropes are a translation tool. Therefore, Troy isn't humoring a delusion. He's learning to speak a second language.
Oh, wow. So it's not enabling, it's bilingualism.
Exactly. When Troy participates in these fantasies, he is demonstrating the ultimate active form of empathy. The playing along is the friendship.
That's beautiful, actually.
The traditional societal expectation is that the neurodivergent person must exhaust themselves, masking, basically forcing themselves to drop their natural coping mechanisms to act normal for the comfort of others.
Which is exhausting.
Incredibly. But Troy flips that entirely. He doesn't demand the bed drop his survival tools. He learns how to operate the tools with him.
He steps into the survival mechanism. By fully committing to the movie homages and the imaginary scenarios, Troy is essentially saying, I see the framework you use to view the world, and I value you enough to meet you inside of it, rather than forcing you out of it.
And the psychological safety that kind of unconditional acceptance provides is immense.
It has to be.
It creates an emotional baseline that allows a bed to actually thrive and evolve. The notes trace a very clear, deliberate trajectory for this character over the course of the narrative. He doesn't remain static.
Yeah, our sources emphasize this evolution heavily. They track his journey from what they initially describe as a walking pop culture machine.
Right, an encyclopedic observer.
Yeah, someone who uses tropes primarily as a shield to keep the chaotic world at bay. But he evolves into a deeply integrated, profoundly complex human character.
And the catalyst for that growth is the security of his connection with Troy.
Because he finally feels safe.
Exactly. Once he realizes he is safe, once he knows his operating system is accepted rather than pathologized, he stops using it purely defensively.
That makes total sense.
We see a shift where he begins using his encyclopedic knowledge of narrative structures to actively help the people around him.
Oh, right, like diagnosing his friends' emotional arcs?
Yes, helping them resolve their conflicts, because he recognizes the narrative beats they are trapped in.
He figures out how to exist outside the television screen without actually having to break the screen.
Exactly. He doesn't abandon his pop culture lens because, as the notes argue, it was never a disease that needed curing.
Right. It was simply the way his brain processed data.
Yes. Instead, he learns how to integrate that system into genuine human experiences. He goes from using tropes to hide from reality to using tropes to actively shape reality.
So what does this all mean? It's a testament to the idea that there is no wrong way to interact with the world, as long as you can find a way to forge authentic connections.
And this raises an important question about how media representation of neurodivergence shifted because of characters like Abed.
Yeah, it was a big shift.
For decades, characters coded as neurodivergent were relegated to the margins.
Right.
They were the emotionless geniuses solving math equations in the background, or the rigid, fastidious neighbors serving as the punchline for the neurotypical protagonist's jokes. They were caricatures, defined entirely by their deficits.
But the analysis here points out that characters like Abed move the needle significantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
By granting him interiority, a functional survival mechanism, and a deeply resonant emotional arc, the narrative redefines what a fully realized character looks like.
It proves that a character can be wildly outside the bounds of traditional social intuition and still be the hero of their own story.
Using their own uniquely calibrated tools.
It fundamentally challenges the listener's assumptions about socialization. It suggests that there is no singular, correct way to interact with the world.
No, not at all.
Whether you communicate through direct eye-to-eye emotional vulnerability or, through heavily layered quotes from an 80s action movie, the mechanics of the communication matter far less than the authenticity of the connection.
I couldn't agree more.
So let me distill the core insights from our source stack for you listening. First, metahumor. when applied as a cognitive framework, isn't just a comedic wink. It can be a vital nervous system regulator.
A Rosetta Stone.
Exactly, translating the overwhelming chaos of reality into predictable patterns. Second, the deeply personal origins of this character, rooted in creator Dan Harmon's own neurodivergent self-discovery bridge, a vital empathy gap.
Inviting the audience to experience the world from the inside of that framework.
Right. And finally, the radical acceptance demonstrated by his friendship with Troy proves that true empathy isn't demanding someone conform to your social language, but being willing to learn theirs.
The analysis holds up incredibly well precisely because it forces us to re-examine the very concept of a coping mechanism. It frames it not as a weakness, but as a highly adaptable survival strategy.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you listening to take a step back and examine your own frameworks. We might not process our daily lives as an homage to a 1990s thriller, but we all have lenses we use to mediate reality.
We really do.
When the world gets chaotic and unpredictable, what structure do you retreat into? Is it perfectly organized spreadsheets? Is it a meticulously curated music playlist that sets the tone for your day? Do you rely on a rigid fitness routine to impose order on a messy week?
We all employ our own translation matrices to filter the glare of reality.
Oh, do.
Building on that thought, our sources hint at a broader cultural shift that I think is just fascinating to consider.
Oh, yeah.
We analyze Abed's reliance on pop culture as a highly specific, individualized survival tool.
Yeah.
But if we look closely at our current digital culture, the lines start to blur.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Think about how we communicate today. We are constantly exchanging memes, reaction GIFs, and audio trends to express complex emotional states.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When a major cultural event happens, or even a minor personal inconvenience, our collective instinct is often to share a prepackaged media trope that perfectly encapsulates the feeling.
That is a staggering point. We aren't typing out long paragraphs about our specific emotional nuances anymore. We're literally sending a 3-second clip of a sitcom character sighing heavily.
Exactly. It raises a compelling question about where society's heading. Are we all slowly adopting a version of this survival mechanism?
It really makes you wonder.
As reality becomes increasingly complex, saturated with information and sensory input, has filtering our lived experience through bite-sized media tropes become the new universal language for human connection?
It makes you wonder if the intuitive social software we talked about at the very beginning is actually being rewritten right in front of us. Are we all just learning to speak Abed's language?
It certainly seems that way.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible rules, keep examining the lenses you use to view the world, and keep looking for the deeper psychology behind the media you consume.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, whether you are running on that supposed instinctual software or flying without an instrument panel, remember that we're all just trying to find a Rosetta Stone that makes sense of the room.